Hey everybody, Sebastian and I just got done seeing the new N.W.A. biopic, Straight Outta Compton. I heard about this movie being made a couple years ago, and I've been really excited ever since. So I'm glad we finally got to go see it.
Yep.
And, you and I listen to a pretty wide variety of music, including hip-hop. So let me ask you this real quick. When did you first hear about the N.W.A., and when did you first hear their music?
The group?
Yeah.
Oh, well, about the time when Eminem was getting big. My dad was really big into Eminem. So, of course, I found out who Dr. Dre was.
Yeah, yeah.
And I worked my way backwards. So I'd say late elementary school, early middle school for me.
Yeah, that's the funny thing is that, the N.W.A., the rise and fall of the group, or I should say fall, but the split of the group, that was before our time, but but the legacy of the N.W.A. is our time.
Mm-hmm.
That was our generation. So it's like impossible for our generation to escape the legacy of the N.W.A. But it's sad how many people our age don't know who they are. I have some friends at work who are really into the current hip hop trend, and we've talked about this. There are some current hip hop musicians I like. I really like Childish Gambino. There's a few guys, but most of the current stuff I'm not a big fan of. I'm a much bigger fan of the '80s stuff. Also, just because the '80s was my favorite decade of music in general, but including hip hop. But I talked to some of them a couple years back when I first heard that this was being made. I said, "Hey, did you hear that they're making an N.W.A. movie and that Ice Cube's son is playing Ice Cube? That's really cool, right?" And one of them even said, "Who's the N.W.A.?" And it's how could you be a fan of hip hop and rap and not know who the N.W.A. is? That's like saying you're a big fan of rock and roll and not know who Led Zeppelin is.
Well,
I don't know.
I don't know if I'd go that far. While I do agree that it's sad that a lot of people don't know who they are, N.W.A. is a bit hardcore for what a lot of people can handle. So it doesn't surprise me that they don't know it or don't like it. Listening to current hip hop, it's a lot different.
Yeah, this movie's
they did a really good job of portraying the '80s and '90s in general from that point of view.
I'll just go say I loved this movie. I thought it was an excellent biopic of both the N.W.A., the members of the N.W.A., mostly Eazy-E, Ice Cube, and Dr. Dre. Not so much everyone else, but in general. And then also just the culture. The '80s, '90s culture of gangster rap, and then also just hip hop in general. And again, the legacy that the N.W.A. has had and the impact, whether you despise gangster rap or in the N.W.A. or whether you love it, you can't deny that it's had a huge impact on culture. So it's really, I just loved this movie. I had a lot of fun watching it.
Yeah,
it's a long movie, but I think it paced itself pretty well. The acting was really good.
Yeah,
very well shot.
Looked like their characters.
Yeah, I mean, oh my
amazing.
gosh, everyone that's portraying these famous rappers looked like the rappers. It was crazy how good they did it. And they did a good job performing as those people. You bought into their performance. It wasn't just oh, they clearly got this guy because he looks like Snoop Dogg. No, this guy is acting like Snoop Dogg. He looks like Snoop Dogg and he's acting like him. One thing that I look for in a movie that's about music specifically or a band or music or whatever you want to say is I feel like the first priority is make sure you do the music stuff well.
What do you mean?
If you're making a movie about the N.W.A., usually your first priority is, well, make sure it's a good movie, yes. But when it's about a music group, I think the first priority is make sure that when you portray the music, when you portray the musicians, and it doesn't have to be textbook history accurate, but it has to be respectfully accurate.
Yeah.
It can't just be its own story and, oh, but look, we have these famous songs that the group did together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So, the first priority when you're making a biopic about a musician or musicians, I feel, is make sure you portray the music stuff right, and then focus on putting it into a well-made and well-written film.
Right.
And this movie does both of those things really well. From a hip-hop standpoint, I think it did the hip-hop stuff really well. There's a lot of times when they were playing songs, and I just couldn't help it but just kind of nod my head to the track, because it was just I'm getting into this. But also, it was paced well, it portrayed it well, and it filmed it well. So as a movie on its own, I also thought it was really good.
all the enjoyable parts of watching a movie, all the entertainment
Mm-hmm.
of watching a movie with music videos in it, and then still all the historical stuff enough to feel like you're watching like a behind the music or
Mm-hmm.
some other just straight biography pick about them.
Mm-hmm.
I think they blended that nicely.
So,
And I will say I liked that it wasn't biased. Because at one point...
that was actually going to be my next question. If you thought
At one point, Dr. Dre and Ice Cube and Eazy-E all had their big fallout, and that was quite a big deal for quite a long amount of time. They had to show it all close together in the movie, but for a long time they weren't really on speaking terms.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like this was biased towards
It wasn't taking a side.
No.
But as far as the movie portraying it as, well, Eazy-E was right, or, well, Ice Cube was, it really doesn't do that.
No.
It sympathizes with both Dr. Dre, Eazy-E, and Ice Cube, all of them. You can see it from all of their point of views. It's fairly done.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, if there is one main character, it is Eazy-E. I mean,
Yeah.
the movie begins with him, it ends with him. I mean, it's really about him the most, but...
I kind of feel like, because you could tell it was kind of a dedication
yeah,
pick sort of thing.
exactly. It wasn't
So I kinda
biased.
feel
It was
like
just,
I feel like they did that on purpose as part of their dedication.
Yeah, exactly.
him.
I don't think it was, even though he is kind of the most centered character, it's not bias for Eazy-E. It still is brutally honest about him.
He was also kind of the band mascot.
Yeah,
He was the
clearly.
crazy one.
Yeah, clearly. Mm-hmm. So, is there anything? I mean, are there any cons that you have with the film? Any criticisms? Fair criticisms?
No. I want all these actors to get together and do an N.W.A. thing.
That'd be kind of cool.
Reshoot a music video as them. That'd be fun.
That'd be kind of neat.
I will say, I heard a story, a news article thing on the radio about people getting upset because they thought, because the movie was misogynist, and they specifically
Like how
hired,
the women are dancing topless at the parties and stuff?
No. Like, they specifically picked the hottest women and all that stuff.
Oh.
And I really don't feel like that was the case. I mean, obviously it kind of was.
Well,
but at the same time, I don't think that would have been any further from real life. I think they would have done the same thing.
I didn't think it was... Well, I didn't... I agree, too, because my point of view is I totally believe that when guys like Eazy-E or Dr. Dre or anybody, when they're having these mansion house parties, when they're having all these people, I totally believe that they're letting in only the prettiest girls. Yeah. Of course they are.
Yeah.
If you think... I mean, whether you think that's right or wrong, I mean, these aren't not to show disrespect, but these weren't exactly people of traditional morals. I mean, I totally believe that they would only let in the hot girls.
Yeah, so I don't feel
it's the same. It's kind of like with Wolf of Wall Street. Like, that's a very extreme movie too, but that's because that's how extreme it was.
I haven't seen it yet.
Well, it's extreme, but like when you see the extreme sexual behavior of the characters in Wolf of Wall Street, it's because that's what they were like.
Yeah.
So when we see the members of the N.W.A. having parties with all these hot chicks and they're all topless, it's like that's because that's what was happening.
Yeah.
Like these guys,
agree.
these were the top. These guys were mega stars. Mm-hmm. So of course they're gonna have these hot chicks at their party.
Yeah. So I feel like it was unfair of people to say that about.
No, I think. I mean, do you want them to fluff this movie and sugarcoat it? No.
I want the real thing.
This movie is again, for whether you like the N.W.A. or to test them, it is a brutally honest, non-biased adaptation. That's exactly what it needs to be. So I do recommend the film. If I had to point out one noticeable, it's not even a criticism, but thing I didn't like too much about the film, I loved the first half of this movie. Like, I was having so much fun with the first half. The second half I liked. And what I mean by that is it just kind of... once the N.W.A. splits up, basically, I felt the movie kind of slow down a bit. Mm-hmm. It was gonna have to get more dramatic because it's portraying what really happened. But like, it just I don't know how to explain it. But it as a movie, I'm criticizing this as a movie, not as what really happened. As a movie, we've seen this story before with the manager getting greedy, with the other manager manipulating, and kind of that sort of thing, you know? And I know that it's trying to tell you what, at least from a movie perspective, what happened. But I'm just saying, as a movie, we've seen that story multiple times in movies about music. And so that was, again, it wasn't bad. It was handled well. I'm just saying it did slow the film down a little bit, in my opinion. And so, again, I loved the first half. I still like the second half. But I do think some of the momentum was kind of slowing down a bit. And because of that, like, at first I was like, I'm just loving this film. This is easily one of my favorite films of the year. It still is one of my favorite films of the year, but it's not quite as high on the list as I was going to put it, if that makes sense. I don't know. Maybe I'm nitpicking, but, like, I don't know. Just the second half didn't do it as much as the first half for me.
Okay.
Besides that, I really didn't have any big problems.
My only problem was the one shot coming up from the pool during the Wet and Wild party, because it was like the CG $20 bills and stuff. I was like, come on. You can't just throw a goddamn 20 in the pool and film it. Fine. I mean, I liked the whole thing.
Yeah. If you're a fan of hip hop, if you're a fan of like me, you know, if you're a fan of the history of music, if you're a fan
if
of
you like VH1's Behind the Music and want to see one on N.W.A,
here you go. Yeah. I find
well acted and
I find the history of music in general to be really fascinating, of all genres, and hip hop just has a really fascinating history, and so I thought this movie did a really good job portraying it. So I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I recommend it.
So that's our review of Straight Outta Compton. So thanks for listening.